I started writing, probably I was 27, 28 years old, and I had quit my job working for the Social Security Administration and was really just unemployed and looking for some way to fill my time. And I started going to the Books A Million in Meridian. I lived in Meridian at the time, and just buying craft books and slowly sort of just teaching myself how to compose a sentence and to compose a story. I had no formal writing training or anything of that nature, so I just filled my time kind of teaching myself.
I have not heard that story before. I've talked to many, many writers.
I'd always liked writing and I'd liked reading, and I thought, well, this is something I can try my hand
Well,
at.
you taught yourself well. Let's talk about Biloxi. In the simplest of terms, it sounds like it's a book about a man and his dog.
Yeah, and that's pretty accurate. So Lewis McDonald Jr. is the narrator, and he's 63 years old, lives in Biloxi, and he's currently gone through just tremendous amount of life changes. He and his wife of many years have divorced, and his father has passed away, and he thinks he's getting a big inheritance, so he kind of impulsively retires from his job.
So it starts off,
And
he's in pretty rough shape emotionally.
yeah, he's in rough shape until the dog comes into his life, and luckily that happens early on, really just page one. He's pulling up to this house, he sees a sign that says free dogs, and he stops. He doesn't really intend to stop, but something in him pulls him toward this house and meets a man there who offers him this overweight mixed breed dog that really doesn't have many redeeming qualities at first that he can see. But yeah, he ends up taking the dog, and so the book is sort of the journey of the two of them.
The book is called Biloxi. Does Biloxi itself play a character in your book?
I hope so. If I did my job right, I hope it does. I lived in Gulfport while I was writing it, and so I was cruising up and down Highway 90, much like Lewis is. I don't know. I've always been intrigued by that part of the state because it's just so different from the rest of the state. And I grew up in Jackson, visiting the coast, and I don't know. I always wanted to set a story there.
Do you write from an outline?
I don't ever use an outline. I know writers who do, and I'm envious of them in certain ways just because I feel like they can wake up and have somewhere that they know that they're going or something they know that they're aiming toward. But I've never really been able to write that way successfully. I'm just kind of following the narrator along. I felt like I was watching him to see what he would do next and what kind of stunts he would pull. But no, I it just kind of wrote it, and I was surprised in many instances as well by the kind of the situations he got himself into.
Did the book naturally come to an end, or did you have to finagle that?
So yeah, endings are really tricky because you want it to get to a point where you feel like the narrator has changed in some way, his situation is different. There has to have been a turn take place. Readers want some kind of satisfying ending, and I did too. I wanted to leave him better off than I found him, and I wanted to give him sort of a new, I hate the cliche, lease on life. But, I do feel like he did come a long way, maybe not in terms that can be expressed or verbalized very easily, but I do feel like he's made a very significant emotional journey. He and the dog are in a good place when I leave them.
What did you know when you started the book?
I knew nothing. The book was just sort of inspired by I also was passing this house, and there was a sign that said free dogs on the mailbox, and there were some balloons. And I just kept thinking about the image, especially just the balloon seemed to not, it's a celebration, a birthday party or a baby. And I just kept thinking about how many dogs, who's giving them away, why did they hang some balloons up, and the balloons were just like deflated and sad. And I just got really focused on that and sat down to try to write about it. And Lewis just immediately showed up as if it was his story and he wanted to tell it. So I was surprised and, kind of delighted by him because
Interesting. The
he's such
dog
a
came first.
curmudgeon.
Who are you writing for?
That's a great question. And it's one that I don't really think about as I'm writing because if I got hung up on this isn't my audience, I'd never written from the perspective of a man before, much less a 63-year-old retiree who lives on the coast, and he's a conservative, watches Fox News all the time. I didn't think necessarily that my particular audience of people who liked my past books, that might not be their cup of tea, but at the same time, that seemed to be the story that I was able to tell and that I was most interested in. So I just sort of followed through with it and didn't think too much about my readers.
Mary Miller is the author of Biloxi. Mary, thank you so much for sharing your book with us.
Thanks so much, Karen.